Are you having a good day? 'Cause you won't be for long. In the year 1999, North Korea made a horrible animated version of the Titanic called The Legend of the Titanic. It's poorly animated, terribly written, beyond offensive to the memory of those who perished on the Titanic, and the plot of it is so wild that you have to ask what the creators were actually on when they were making it.
We are gonna sink the Titanic tonight!
Like, there's magic moonbeams, an octopus with a snout, a mouse wedding, the worst voice acting you've ever heard, and there's also some vaguely creepy stuff. Now, when I say this movie is North Korean, while there is some input from other countries, when you look at the credits, the director is North Korean and a higher up in one of North Korea's state-owned studios. It's literally a North Korean government animation studio, and this very same studio animated the movie. So let's just go on a whimsical journey and sink right into this. The movie starts out with a version of Frank Sinatra's New York, New York playing, as it shows the New York City skyline, which is absolutely foul because the people on the Titanic never made it to New York. It's like dancing on their graves. The Titanic sank on its maiden voyage, started in Southampton, UK, and was supposed to end in New York. The people never made it, and this movie wants you to remember that. Now, in New York, we get to see this grandfather mouse telling the story of the Titanic to his little mouse children. And while you can't really understand what the grandfather mouse is saying because of the horrible voice acting, you can hear him say one sentence about the people who perished on the Titanic, saying that the missing people were never really missing, and that it's all a big misunderstanding.
A lot of people died, huh?
The truth of the matter is that those missing persons were never really missing. It's all a misunderstanding.
This is just your average North Korean government talking point. Now, the grandpa's story of the Titanic, the one to blame for this tragedy, is not an iceberg, but rather the cruel Mr. Ice.
Ice was a cruel and merciless monster. The terrible Mr. Ice!
I cannot with these voiceovers. Where did they even find people to dub this? Why would you do this? Now we go back in time to the beginning of his story, and the Titanic is boarding. The mice have their own boarding station, and everything's going great. Everyone's really excited to get on the Titanic, except for this random rich lady who's definitely not ripping off Rose from the James Cameron version of the Titanic. Meet Elizabeth, a rich lady from a rich background. We don't know much about her, but she is this movie's replacement for Rose. And she's expected to get married to an evil rich man she doesn't really love, named Maltravers. And to show that he's evil, the movie decided to give him an eye patch. Sorry, people with only one eye. North Korea thinks you're evil. And Elizabeth doesn't want to marry this guy because, yes, he's corrupt, but also, he's old.
Elizabeth, behave yourself.
Horrifying, disgusting, old serpent.
What do you mean, old? He's barely 40. Oh.
And her dad's not letting her off the hook. He's saying, no, you need status, so you're gonna do it. The mice begin their boarding procedure, and one of the families is named Ratatouille. The others are just named after cheese. One of them is mozzarella.
Ratatouille, Parmigiano, Gorgonzola, mozzarella.
While the people are boarding, we see a man dancing with his dog, and then his dog runs off, and the creepiest sequence takes place with gloves and him sniffing out Elizabeth. The dog steals her glove and brings it back to his owner, where his owner takes a good long whiff of her glove. Like, this feels like a crime. This guy is supposed to be the replacement for Jack. This is the Jack Dawson of this movie. And here's something hilarious about the Jack Dawson character. While the studio tried ripping off the Titanic, they actually missed a huge part of the romance between Jack and Rose. It's the fact that they were from different economic backgrounds. Jack was in third class and he didn't have a penny to his name. Meanwhile, Rose had a very wealthy history. But in the North Korean Titanic, she's a lady, her dad's a duke, and the Jack Dawson character is a prince. So they're all just rich. No poor people allowed on the Titanic. So we have the state-produced North Korean movie saying that the missing people were a myth and hiding the existence of poor people. Odd. While the mice are boarding, the grandpa mouse develops a crush on generic blonde mouse number 5. She will mostly disappear for the rest of the movie, but this will come up later. Everybody boards the Titanic, the dog has an alarming medical issue, but then the ship is off. A beauty of the seas, a timeless work of art, and the peak of human engineering in all of her glory. What the fuck? What the hell? What are they doing? When I was in the 6th grade, I would play, like, this Escape the Titanic game on Roblox. This was many, many, many years ago. And the model on there was far better than the one in this movie. And I don't even know if the game is still up now, but if I go on Roblox right now, there are still Roblox Titanic games, and all of these are vastly better than the one in this movie. Who makes better boats? Roblox developers or the North Korean state? Right after starting its journey, the evil guy is talking, revealing his very silly, evil plot. And he starts getting really mad at his henchman. And this is clearly the pinnacle of North Korean writing.
Well, my replaceable factotum, why the cackling? Pray let me in on the joke.
Now, Maltravers, the evil guy, does not like Elizabeth either. He only wants to marry her so that way her father can apparently give him worldwide whaling rights, so he can hunt whales for money.
There's no reason whatsoever why the Duke shouldn't grant me exclusive worldwide whaling rights.
Also, as a side note, the mice are scared because there are 2 cats on board the Titanic.
But on board, not only several dogs, unfortunately, 2 cats.
You don't need to add new stakes to the story. You don't need to say, oh no, there's cats that might eat the mice. The Titanic hitting an iceberg in the middle of the frigid Atlantic Ocean and then sinking down 12,000 feet under the water with the stern literally imploding as it's sinking. What's scarier than that? Let me see. 2 cats. The rich people in the upper-class dining room have a dinner that's filled with a lot of tension, similar to the scenes in James Cameron's Titanic. Elizabeth's family, particularly her stepmom, are pressuring her to marry the evil guy. And she doesn't want to, so she leaves. Except, unlike the Titanic, one of the mice is creepily staring down Elizabeth, staring at her through a vent. The main character mouse we're following tries to tell this guy, you're a mouse, she's a human, it's not gonna work out. And then the greatest line in cinematic history is uttered.
She's a woman and you're a mouse. Well, there's one thing I'm not, and that's a racist.
Elizabeth runs off, crying. And as she reaches the edge of the boat, her tears fall into the water. And her tears falling in the water trigger a spell that these magical orcas have cast on her through the way that her tears interact with, and I quote, magic moonbeams.
I can understand them. You can understand us thanks to a net of magic moonbeams that caught your tears as they fell into the water.
Moonbeams.
Voila!
And the orcas are talking about saving the whales and how the evil sharks in the water are trying to annihilate the whales. So it kind of actually does tie into the romance plot, but it is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Maltravers has a conversation with Elizabeth's dad, and Elizabeth's dad said there's no hurry for a wedding. So then Maltravers decides to use evil sharks to sink the Titanic.
What's going on?
Ship has to sink tonight.
Consider it done, Pally. Midnight on the dot.
Elizabeth goes to her rich person room on the Titanic, and the mice become her friends. Elizabeth's evil stepmother and Maltravers actually appear to be in love and are talking about how to sink the ship. Elizabeth goes to her dad and says that she does not want to marry Maltravers at all. And the dad, for some reason, even though he was really, really strict about it at the beginning of the movie, has completely switched sides and tells her that she doesn't need to do anything she doesn't want to do.
I would never dream of forcing you to do something you don't want to. He's barely 40. Elizabeth, don't be impertinent. You have a position to keep up.
Do you remember the weird guy who was dancing with his dog at the beginning of the movie? Creepy Jack Dawson? He starts having a little bit more relevance now. The mice and his dog try to set him and Elizabeth up. And it works. They dance for a really long time in this horribly drawn out sequence. Now that they're in love, it's iceberg time. The evil sharks trick this giant baby octopus, Tentacles, into throwing an iceberg at the Titanic by saying they're playing an ice throwing competition and leading him to throw it straight into the path of the ship. Then the sharks hold the Titanic in place so it can't steer away. That's right, the thing that sank the Titanic was actually an octopus. And here's where we gotta talk about the octopus, okay? Why does the octopus have a snout? They stay under the water, and a nose implies that it's breathing air. And after the octopus is manipulated into throwing the iceberg at the Titanic, he feels really bad. And the most patronizing, Karen-ass orca, instead of comforting him, because again, the octopus is just a kid, decides to bully him.
Beat my own record. You threw an iceberg at a ship full of people. You really did it this time, kid.
Even though, again, it is the evil sharks who are responsible. Maltravers ties up Elizabeth's dad and forces him to sign the whaling rights document. Then him and his evil gang flee in a boat to go far away from here. As the boat is sinking, it's having a hard time sending out an SOS. The wires for the SOS system are severed. So, the most tragic scene in all of cinematic history takes place. The mouse chef of the ship, Jean-Luc Camembert, tells them to connect the wires together through his mustache and lays down, gets electrocuted, and dies. As the Titanic breaks, the octopus holds it together so people can get off into the lifeboats. Mostly everybody's off, except for the main characters and the captain. The captain has made peace with his own end. He's just standing there letting himself go down with the ship. And then the octopus swoops in and grabs him and brings him to safety. But for some reason, he still leaves the main characters on board. Characters who really wanted to live. They wanted to live, they were trying to escape, and the captain made peace with death, but the octopus chose the captain instead of the main characters. That makes sense. And then the main characters randomly jump when the stern is nearly at its highest point in the air. See, there's actually no reason for them to jump instead of just staying on the boat for longer. You're just increasing the time you're exposed to icy water. So they're basically decreasing their survival rate. They land in the water, they stay under there for a bit, but then they're rescued. And the movie starts coming to its conclusion. The evil people get lost at sea forever, but everybody else makes it to New York. And the movie genuinely tries to say that the biggest tragedy and life lost in this version of the Titanic was Camembert's mustache sacrifice.
Heroes who gave their lives for the rest of us. God bless their memory.
The grandpa mouse gets married, and Elizabeth and this guy get married. The orcas, whales, and octopus visit the people in New York, and they all have a great celebration. And then the movie's done. Thank God. So just to recap, this movie said, no one perished on the Titanic, you're being overdramatic. There were magic moonbeams, a war between whales and sharks, an evil guy with an eye patch, a mouse who fell in love with a woman, and the reason it sank was because an octopus threw ice into it. Sorry to the people on the Titanic. This was truly the movie of all movies. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.